In 1929, there was a man named Roger Babson who looked out from his office window in Wellesley Hills, Massachusetts, and watched the wealthiest nation on earth prepare to destroy itself. He was not watching poor people. He was not watching the struggling masses. He was watching doctors, lawyers, stockbrokers, and executives, people earning 10, 20, 50 times the average American salary, line up at banks to withdraw money they did not have. Within weeks, many of them would be ruined. Not because they earned too little, but because they had confused earning with having. They had mistaken income for wealth, and they had wrapped golden chains around their own necks so tightly that when the economy shifted, they could not breathe. I want to tell you why a high salary might be the most dangerous thing that ever happens to your financial life. And I want to explain why the people who look rich are often the ones closest to disaster, while the people who look ordinary are sometimes sitting on fortunes. This is the story of the golden handcuffs, and by the end of it, you might see your own paycheck very differently. Let me take you back to a small town in Vermont in the winter of 1946. The war had just ended. Soldiers were coming home, and in a modest house on a quiet street, a man named Ronald Red was starting his first real job. He was a gas station attendant. He pumped fuel, washed windshields, and swept the floors at closing time. His hands were calloused. His clothes were simple. His neighbors would have described him as pleasant but unremarkable. When he eventually got promoted, it was to a position at a J.C. Penney store as a janitor. Ronald Reed spent most of his working life cleaning floors and stocking shelves. He never earned more than a modest wage. He never owned a fancy car. He never took extravagant vacations. When he died in 2014 at the age of 92, his neighbors assumed he left behind very little. They were wrong. Ronald Reed left behind nearly $8 million. $8 million accumulated on a janitor's salary over the course of a lifetime. He had invested small amounts consistently for decades. He had lived below his means. He had let compound interest do what compound interest does when you give it enough time. And here is what haunts me about this story. In that same year, 2014, there were hedge fund managers earning $50 million annually who filed for bankruptcy. There were executives with seven-figure salaries who could not cover their mortgage payments. There were surgeons and attorneys and tech founders who had earned more in a single year than Ronald Red earned in his entire life. And yet they had less than nothing. They had debt. They had obligations. They had a lifestyle that demanded constant feeding. Ronald Red was rich, they were not. And the difference had nothing to do with how much money they made. It had everything to do with how much money they kept. This is the paradox I want to sit with for a moment. We have been trained since childhood to believe that wealth comes from earning, get a better job, get a promotion, get a raise, climb the ladder, increase your income. And there is truth in this, up to a point. But beyond that point, something strange happens. Beyond that point, increasing your income can actually make you poorer, not because the money itself is bad, but because of what high income does to your brain, your expectations, and your sense of what you deserve. Let me explain how this works. Imagine you are 25 years old and you land your first serious job. You are earning $50,000 a year. You rent a small apartment. You drive a used car. You go out to dinner occasionally, but mostly you cook at home. You save a little each month, not much, but something. Now fast forward 5 years. You have worked hard. You have been promoted. You are now earning $90,000. Your income has almost doubled. Logic would suggest you should be saving twice as much, but you are not. You have moved to a nicer apartment because you can afford it. You have leased a better car because you deserve it. You go out to dinner more often because you have earned it. Your savings rate has not increased. In some cases, it has actually decreased. Now fast forward another 5 years. You are earning $150,000. You have done everything right by conventional standards. And yet you feel exactly as financially stressed as you did at $50,000. Maybe more so, because now you have a mortgage on a house that reflects your status. You have private school tuition for your children. You have country club memberships. You have vacation expectations. You have a lifestyle that costs $145,000 a year to maintain. And that lifestyle is hungry. It demands to be fed every single month. This is what I mean by golden handcuffs. They look beautiful from the outside. They feel comfortable in the moment, but they are still handcuffs. And the moment your income wavers, the moment there is a recession, a layoff, a health crisis, a market downturn, those handcuffs tighten, and you realize you are trapped. Here is where the logic breaks down, and where most people miss the essential truth about money. Wealth is not what you earn. Wealth is what you do not spend. Read that again. Let it settle. Wealth is what you accumulate, not what flows through your hands. Income is a current. Wealth is a reservoir. And you can have a powerful current flowing through your life every month and still have an empty reservoir if you let every drop flow right back out. I have seen this pattern repeat throughout history, and it never changes. In the Gilded Age of the 1890s, the robber barons built mansions that cost more to maintain than most Americans earned in a lifetime. They threw parties that lasted for weeks. They commissioned custom yachts and private rail cars. And when the economy turned, many of them were ruined within months. Not because they stopped earning, but because their obligations outpaced their income the moment things slowed down. In the 1920s, it happened again. Young brokers and bankers in Manhattan were earning fortunes beyond imagination. They bought apartments overlooking Central Park. They dined at the finest restaurants. They wore custom suits and carried pocket watches made of gold. And when the crash came, they discovered that everything they owned belonged to someone else. Their wealth was an illusion, a projection of future earnings that would never materialize. They had been living on a promise, and the promise was broken. What is your biggest financial fear? I ask this not to create anxiety, but because I think the answer reveals something important about how we think about money. Most people, when asked this question, say something about not earning enough. They fear losing their job. They fear not getting the promotion. They fear falling behind their peers. But I would argue that the more dangerous fear, the one we should really be paying attention to, is the fear of not being able to stop. The fear of building a life so expensive that you can never step away from the income that supports it. The fear of being trapped by your own success. This is a subtler form of financial danger. It does not announce itself. It accumulates gradually, like weight gain or credit card debt. One day you wake up and realize that your high salary has not made you free. It has made you dependent, and dependence, when it comes to money, is the opposite of wealth. Let me tell you about another man from history whose story illustrates this perfectly. His name was Jesse Livermore, and in the early 20th century he was one of the most famous speculators on Wall Street. At his peak, Livermore was worth over $100 million, an almost incomprehensible sum at the time. Adjusted for inflation, he would be a billionaire by today's standards. He had multiple mansions, he had yachts, he had a private rail car. He had everything that money could buy. And yet Jesse Livermore died broke. Worse than broke, he died in debt. He filed for bankruptcy multiple times throughout his career. He earned fortunes and lost them repeatedly. And the reason was always the same. His lifestyle expanded to consume every dollar he made, and then some. When the money flowed, he spent it. When the money stopped, he borrowed against the expectation that it would flow again. He was never building a reservoir. He was always just managing a current. And when the current dried up, there was nothing left. Compare this to someone like Hetty Green, who lived during the same era. Hetty Green was the wealthiest woman in America at the time of her death in 1916. She controlled a fortune estimated at over $200 million. And yet, she was famous for her frugality, almost to the point of being considered eccentric. She wore the same black dress for years. She haggled over small purchases. She lived in modest apartments even though she could have owned palaces. People mocked her for this. They called her miserly. They said she did not know how to enjoy her money. But Hetty Green understood something that Jesse Livermore never grasped. Money is not meant to be spent. Money is meant to be used. And the greatest use of money is not buying things. It is buying options. Options to walk away. Options to say no. Options to wait for the right opportunity instead of being forced to take the wrong one. Hetty Green was never trapped. Jesse Livermore was always trapped, even when he was worth $100 million. That is the difference between income and wealth. But here is what makes this so difficult, and why I have sympathy for everyone caught in the golden handcuffs. The pressure to spend is not just internal, it is social. It is constant. It is built into the very fabric of modern life. When you earn a high salary, people expect you to live a certain way. Your colleagues expect it. Your neighbors expect it. Your family expects it. And most painfully, you expect it of yourself. You have internalized a story about what success looks like, and that story has a price tag attached to it. You believe that the car you drive reflects your competence. You believe that the house you live in reflects your value. You believe that the vacations you take reflect the life you have built. And so you spend. Not because you are foolish, not because you are irresponsible, but because you are human. And humans are social creatures who take their cues from the people around them. This is the psychological trap. This is why high earners so often end up with nothing. They are not stupid. They are caught in a system that rewards spending and punishes saving. They are surrounded by messages that tell them to consume. And they are comparing themselves to other high earners who are doing exactly the same thing, spending everything they make and then some, without realizing that everyone around them is just as fragile, just as dependent, just as handcuffed as they are. The question then is not how to earn more. The question is how to need less. And I do not mean this in a puritanical way. I am not suggesting that you should live in deprivation or deny yourself all pleasure. I am suggesting something more subtle, that you should carefully examine the gap between what you earn and what you need, and that you should protect that gap fiercely. That gap is your freedom. That gap is your wealth. That gap is what separates Ronald Read from the hedge fund managers who filed for bankruptcy. The janitor with an $8 million fortune understood something that the Wall Street executives did not. The goal is not to look wealthy. The goal is to be wealthy. And being wealthy means having assets that work for you while you sleep. It means having a reservoir that can sustain you when the current stops flowing. It means having options. The option to quit a job you hate, the option to take a year off, the option to start over, the option to help a family member in crisis, the option to say no to things that compromise your integrity. Those options are worth more than any car. They are worth more than any house. They are worth more than any vacation or watch or suit or membership. And yet most people trade those options away, one purchase at a time, without ever realizing what they are giving up. Let me offer you a different way to think about your salary. Instead of asking, what can this money buy me? Ask, what can this money free me from? Every dollar you save is a dollar that buys you one less day of obligation in the future. Every dollar you invest is a dollar that works for you while you rest. Every dollar you do not spend on impressing others is a dollar you can use to build the life you actually want. Not the life that looks good from the outside, but the life that feels good from the inside. This shift in perspective is subtle, but it changes everything. It transforms money from a tool of consumption into a tool of liberation. It transforms earning from a treadmill into a ladder. And it transforms a high salary from golden handcuffs into something genuinely valuable, the raw material from which real wealth is built. But the building must be intentional. It must be protected. It must be prioritized. And it requires saying no to things that feel good in the moment, but leave you trapped in the long run. I think about the nature of enough. This is perhaps the most important financial concept that no one ever teaches. Enough is not a number. Enough is a feeling. And for most people, that feeling is always just slightly out of reach, always one promotion away, always one raise away, always one purchase away. This is by design. We live in an economy that depends on people wanting more. We are surrounded by advertising that tells us we are incomplete without this product or that experience. We are shown images of people who seem happier, more successful, more fulfilled than we are. And we are told that the path to becoming like them runs through our wallet. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Most of those people are not happier. They are not more fulfilled. They are just better at performing success. They are just further along the treadmill. And the treadmill never ends, not until you decide to step off it. Defining enough is a radical act. It means rejecting the premise that more is always better. It means accepting that there is a ceiling to how much consumption can improve your life. It means acknowledging that beyond a certain point, additional spending does not add to your well-being. It subtracts from your freedom. And freedom in the end is what money is really for. Let me bring this back to where we started, to the paradox of the high earner who is not wealthy. The reason this happens is not complicated. It is just uncomfortable to acknowledge. High earners often fail to build wealth because they never separate their standard of living from their standard of earning. They let one rise with the other, always maintaining the same narrow gap between income and expenses. And so they stay trapped, working harder, earning more, spending more, working harder, earning more, spending more, until one day they wake up and realize that despite decades of high income, they have nothing to show for it except obligations. They have accumulated stuff instead of assets. They have collected possessions instead of options. They have built a lifestyle instead of a life. And a lifestyle, unlike true wealth, is fragile. It depends on continued income. It depends on continued health. It depends on continued luck. Remove any one of those dependencies and the whole structure collapses. True wealth, by contrast, is anti-fragile. It survives recessions. It survives job losses. It survives health crises. It survives the unexpected, because it was built precisely for the unexpected. A person with true wealth can weather a year without income. They can take a risk on a new venture without fearing ruin. They can say no to work that compromises their values. They can walk away. That ability to walk away is worth more than any salary, no matter how high. It is worth more than any title, no matter how prestigious. It is worth more than any possession, no matter how impressive. And it is available to almost anyone at almost any income level who is willing to prioritize it. Ronald Read prioritized it. He did not earn much, but he kept what he earned. He did not impress his neighbors, but he built something that lasted. He died rich, not in the flashy, performative way that our culture celebrates, but in the quiet, permanent way that actually matters. So here is my invitation to you. Look at your salary, not as a measure of how much you can spend, but as a measure of how much you can save. Look at your lifestyle not as a reflection of your success, but as a potential trap that limits your future options. Look at your golden handcuffs, the mortgage, the car payment, the memberships, the expectations, and ask yourself honestly, are these worth my freedom? Are these worth my peace of mind? Are these worth the decades of continued work that will be required to maintain them? For some things, the answer may be yes. Some expenses genuinely improve our lives. Some possessions genuinely bring us joy. I am not suggesting that all spending is wrong. I am only suggesting that unconscious spending, spending that rises automatically with income, spending that is driven by social comparison rather than genuine need, is the enemy of wealth. And breaking free from unconscious spending is the first step toward building something that lasts. Time is the only resource that cannot be bought back. Once it is spent, it is gone forever. And yet most people trade their time for money, and then trade their money for things that do not matter, things that will be forgotten, discarded, or replaced within a few years. The cruel irony is that if they had simply kept that money, invested it wisely, and let it compound, they would have eventually earned back something far more valuable than any possession: their time. True wealth is not about having nice things. True wealth is about having control over your own hours. It is about waking up in the morning and deciding how you want to spend your day, not because you are obligated, but because you are free. That is what Ronald Read had. That is what the bankrupt hedge fund managers did not have. And that is what I hope you will consider as you think about your own relationship with money. The golden handcuffs look beautiful, but they are still handcuffs. And the only person who can take them off is you. If this way of thinking about money resonates with you, I hope you will continue this journey with me. There is so much more to explore about patience, about luck, about the quiet art of building something that outlasts us. Subscribe, and let us keep asking the questions that actually matter. Because in the end, the goal is not to get rich. The goal is to stay rich. And staying rich is a completely different skill than getting rich. It requires humility. It requires patience. It requires the willingness to look ordinary, even when you do not have to. And it requires remembering every single day that the most valuable thing your money can buy is not a thing at all. It is the freedom to spend your time exactly the way you want,